The sticky note here on the front of the book says "Fire yourself." So, what you may have some explaining to do.
Well, I get a lot of questions about that. The subtitle of the book is "Fire Yourself: Another Revolutionary Ways to Discover Your True Calling at Work." But here's why I have that on there. I'm not encouraging people to literally do that, but I hear from people every day who have gotten fired, and there's always the immediate response is expecting less. We got to take the kids out of Christian school, we're going to turn the cars back in, not go on vacation this year, give up our golf club memberships. They always expect less. But if we really take a realistic look at some of the opportunities that are out there today, almost without exception, those people 18, 24 months later look back and say, you know what, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me out of just complacency or even out of comfortable misery and forced me to look at what the options are, and I discovered there's some new things happening out here. I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I took that last job anyway. So my encouragement is don't wait for circumstances to put you in that position where then you're desperate. It's healthy at any given time to draw that proverbial line in the sand and say, where am I going and how am I going to get there? And in as much as we hear a lot about, we've been talking about layoffs and downsizing and outsourcing and all those horrible terms nobody wants to hear, there's a whole lot of positive things that are happening in the workplace as well, and a lot of new opportunities that people can take advantage of.
Dan, I had the great opportunity over a year ago to work at WGNS full time, and I had been working there since I was a teenager in high school and worked through college, and the great opportunity came about, but it takes what my wife and I finally termed it was a leap of faith, that you were comfortable in the position that you were in. They obviously had confidence in what I was doing because they kept me and 9 others were gone. But I had the opportunity, and it's really been a blessing to my family. That takes a lot of courage, and a lot of people maybe will stay in that comfortable position because you kind of mentioned that just a second ago. How do you break that mold? How do you break out of that and gain the confidence to make that step of faith?
Now, the status quo can be very appealing. Just because things are predictable, we tend to hang on to it and often bypass things that would be better opportunities while we're doing that. But I tell people there are 5 predictors of success, 5 things that you really want to have. And these don't have anything to do with your IQ or GPA or what you majored in college. They're really personal characteristics. Number 1 is passion. You need to know what it is you really care about. And if you have that, it'll drive you towards success. Number 2 is determination. Well, you have to stick with it when other people may fall by the wayside. You have to have clear goals in mind, be willing to stick with it. Number 3 is talent. You have to have something that you recognize you do just extremely well, but everybody has that. Number 4 is self-discipline. That really makes all the others work. You have to be self-disciplined. If you need somebody to tell you when to get up in the morning, when to take a coffee break, then you need to stay in a traditional job. But if you have self-discipline, it opens up a whole new arena of opportunities. Number 5 is what you just mentioned, faith. Even when everything lines up, when it looks like it all makes sense, there still comes that time when you need to step out in faith. We have another Harrison Ford movie right now. Well, a couple back, you remember that time where he had gone through the gauntlet and he'd gone through all these obstacles, and then he came to that chasm. There was just no bottom to it. He thought, how could this be possible? I'm sure God is directing me through all those things. I got through those successfully, and now I'm at something where I can't go any further. What is wrong with this picture? And that very poignant moment in the movie where he steps out thinking that he's going to crash to the bottom, and the path of tears going right under his feet, and he walks across. Sometimes it's like that, and that's a great component to have. But if you have those 5 characteristics, passion, determination, talent, self-discipline, and faith, you really open yourself up so you don't feel vulnerable by what any company, politics, or government, or whatever is going to do. You recognize that you really are in the driver's seat, and some pretty interesting options may be right under your nose.
Dan Miller is joining us today, 48days.com, and Dan, the fact that you see people in their 30s, maybe 40s, about this career change. You know, I'm changing directions totally. Does it take a few years sometimes in the workforce to really find what our talent is? I mean, to really fine-tune it and get it down to, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do?
It really does. It's unrealistic to expect somebody at 18 years old or 22 years old to make that one decision that's going to determine the direction of their life for the next 40 years. It's unrealistic. This is an unfolding process. Now, that doesn't mean that you start and stop, but we have to realize there has to be something that acts as a compass through these inevitable changes. When we know that the average job is 3.2 years in length, when you just do the math on that, if you come into the workplace at 20 and leave at 70, that's 50 years. Changing that often, you're going to have 14, 15 different jobs. Here's an interesting fact that goes along with that. We know now that those who are in their 20s, the average length of a job for somebody in their 20s in America today was 13 months. 13 months. So again, that's okay. That's all right. It's not a bad thing. But you have to understand that jobs will come and go. But if we frame it a little bit differently, there's really a distinction between what I call calling, career, and job. Those are three very different terms, although we tend to kind of throw them in together. Calling or vocation is the big picture. It comes from vocare, a Latin word which means to call, hear God's voice. You know, what do you want to do to make a difference in the world? How do you want to be remembered? That's the big picture. Career then is a subset of that. And there should be 8 or 10 different things you can do as a career that would fully embrace anything you define as a vocational calling. Job then is the smallest component. Job is what we do daily to create income, bless our families. It's important, it ought to tie in with the others. But if we frame it in that way, you see that changing a job or losing a job, even if you haven't chosen that, should never change the direction of your life. It shouldn't change your calling or your vocation. So if you step back, instead of being so focused on just the job, really focus on where is my life going and recognize there are other components of a successful life in addition to the work we do daily anyway. The job is just one tool for a successful life. We ought to be able to see that our lives can continue successfully even if things happen in the jobs that we didn't welcome or expect.
We're talking with life, family, and just many components that
Personal
go.
development, spiritually, physically, socially, those are all things that are legitimate components of a successful life. Job is not the only one.
We're going to continue the conversation with Dan Miller and County Commissioner Mike Sparks in just a moment as we are from the North Rutherford Y, the Ronald Reagan Family Center. It's Rutherford Issues on a Thursday afternoon. We'll be right back. With you being a politician and taxes and a used car salesman, where does that put you on the likable list? I mean,
I need to take something to get over this depression, man. It was really depressing when I leave out here.
Maybe you need to read the book again. Dan, it's really interesting the fact that we hear a lot about the economy. We hear a lot about how bad it is. And yeah, there are things going on, it seems, with gas prices being higher and food costs and all that. Many of the things that we talked to with Denise. But can we get ourselves past that? I mean, make a few adjustments and still live comfortably and really focus on getting through something like that rather than just being depressed and down in the dumps and, you know, everything is just horrible.
I hope so. I hope so. I choose not to believe everything is horrible. Remember the story about Chicken Little? Chicken Little was walking along and an acorn fell off a tree on her head and she wouldn't believe the sky was falling. So she started telling everybody the sky's falling. Everybody started following her and they went to see the king to tell him the sky was falling. Well, a lot of what we hear about the economy and recessions and all that today is really along the same mentality. You can choose to believe that things are bad, and you can choose to believe that things are good. And I tell people, you know, recession is a political and economic term, and we hear it bandied about a lot. Really, what does that mean for you and me personally, right here in Rutherford County? You know, are there opportunities or are there not? It companies that need good people. There are things that need to be modified in schools, churches, all kinds of programs. We need innovation and new ingenuity to be brought into those things. And I'm determined that your success, my success, is not going to be determined by what happens in the White House. It's going to be determined by what happens in my house. That's where my chances of success are. And if I get up every morning and I believe that there are opportunities, and I think that if I could be a used car dealer like Mike, if I'm going to serve people well, guess what? They're going to want to know. We had a hard time getting away from this place today to come over here because there's people coming in the middle of the day, standing in line to have an opportunity to buy a car from. That speaks well. And it doesn't matter. I mean, how much does it take to be successful in a small business these days if you're treating people well? Or if you got a hardware store, we're going to repair things. Serve them well, show them the opportunity to save $100 by repairing the lawnmower rather than going out and buying a new one. There's just opportunities in so many different pockets.
Well, let me ask you, Dan, I was got a young boy that's kind of working with me, 23-year-old, MTSU, just graduated, he's from Russia. And we were talking, I asked him about the Bible, just we got to talking about the Bible religion. And he just was clueless, didn't know anything about the Bible, didn't know any scripture, just never grew up with religious teaching. You mentioned faith, you mentioned spiritual level. How important is that when you're dealing with career choices or difficulties like that? How important is it, not only to you, but do you think other people?
Well, I see that played out a lot without any question. And I have a strong spiritual framework. People know that. And it gives people comfort to hear me talk about that. But we see that played out. We know that day-to-day circumstances are not going to control us. Certainly, eternally, they're probably not going to control us 6 months from now. So it helps to have a long time perspective. And having a spiritual framework certainly helps us do that. But we see that even with where people end up financially. People with a short time frame think just in a real short time. If somebody makes $8 an hour, I know they tend to think week to week. If somebody's income goes up a little bit, they start to think, next year we're going to go on vacation. Next year we're going to open a Roth IRA. But you talk to somebody who's making a couple $100,000 a year, they're always thinking in 5 and 10 years out, increments. Well, then it becomes which comes first, cart before the horse. If you start to think longer term, if you start to think about what kind of an impact do I want to have on my children, how do I want them to remember me 30 years from now, you start thinking about things that have a longer time frame than just, gee, I know the rent is due Friday and we're spending. You've got to get beyond just those day-to-day sense of details that are making us feel like things are urgent. A longer time perspective, and certainly strong faith helps us do that.
You mentioned two great books that you recommend to folks. Can you name those?
I have never met a really successful person who has not read 2 books. One being Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The other being Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're both old books, but the principles are timeless. And I've seen people, once they grab a hold of those, because I'm a big advocate of reading books. Books are a wealth of wisdom. I'll tap into the wisdom of the ages. And if you want to change where you are, a lot of times it has to do with changing your thinking. More than it does with forcing circumstances to change, and we may not have any control over it. Change your thinking. You can change what your destiny is going to be real quick.
When I had met you at Christ Church, probably 11 years ago, working with Nissan. This is the guy that told me just to quit me, didn't walk out. You just said you ought to quit Nissan and move on with what you want to do, which was really surprising. I tell you to walk away from a $60,000 job. But he was the only one that really spurred me on to kind of start my own business. But I asked you, I said, have you got any good books or you'd recommend? You remember what it was you told me?
No, I don't.
The Millionaire Next Door.
Oh, okay. Thomas Stanley.
Yeah.
The Millionaire Next Door.
That was a great book. In fact, I went out and got it. I think I probably loaned it to somebody I didn't get back. But it was a great book.
You can always find another copy somewhere.
But it was.
Talk to the author. Authors are great at giving copies away.
Oh, yeah, Arthur, though? Yeah.
Mike, before our time is kind of running short here, and something that Dan said just kind of made me think about this and what's going on tomorrow. decisions that affect us directly are not always made in Washington. That's why I don't understand why everybody will go out and vote for president, but in Murfreesboro or local elections we can only get 7 or 8% of the voters to come out and vote. But anyway, what is going to happen tomorrow with the Rutherford County Commission is going to affect local people. But the budget is going to be set tomorrow. It's a 9 o'clock meeting. We are going to cover the meeting, yes sir. We're going to have updates on that. But that tomorrow, what should we expect? Do you really know the details of what's going to happen?
Listening to WGNS.
Okay.
Listen to WGNS. Real quick, I wanted to thank Dan. Dan kind of killed 2 birds, 1 stone today. He had told me today, find me about an $800 car. I said, Dan, you can't find an $800 car. They're just not out there. And it was like 2 days later, a guy came in and had this little car. And I said, look, I'm looking for a little car. And Dan is buying this little car, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. He's giving it to a girl out of Murfreesboro. Out of prison, I believe, out of jail. And you were telling me your wife is just dead set on helping this girl. And but it was kind of like a divine thing where this guy just showed up with this car, and he said, here, I said, you just take care of the taxes, you can have the car. And I was like, wow, okay. And I called Jay, I got a car here. And we got to go to Goodyear, we got the AC and stuff taken care of. So that looks like it's going to work out real good for you. But this guy is a true servant, and I just want to thank you for coming up.
Appreciate you being here, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, for Mike Sparks and for our first guest, Denise Esker from the Smyrna Laverne Food Bank and Jenny Williams, Rotary President, I'm Brian Barrett. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I'll be back with more news back in the studio in just a few. But right now, ABC checks in.